Now, please welcome our guest moderator, news editor of Empire magazine and part of the presenting team on BBC's Film 2012, Chris Hewitt.
Everyone, thanks for coming. Now, Great Expectations is one of Charles Dickens' best and best-loved novels. There's been a few notable film adaptations across the years. David Lean, of course, and Mike Newell, the director of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire and Four Weddings and a Funeral, is just the latest to bring something fresh to this literary classic. Before we meet him and his two young stars, let's take a look at the trailer.
Hold your noise! Hold your noise! Oh, devil, I'll cut your throat! Tell us your name, quick! Once more, give it mouth!
Do you wish to see Miss Havisham? Let me look at you. Come closer. What do you think of her? I think she's very pretty. You can break his heart.
It is the desire of the benefactor that he be brought up as a gentleman in London.
What do you think?
There are conditions, of course. The first is that the name of the benefactor remain a profound secret. The second being that you always retain the name
Pip.
He has come into a handsome fortune, and he has great expectations.
You must know I have no heart.
I don't believe it.
I've been made that way.
If she wounds your lover, if she favors your lover, or if she tears your heart to pieces, love her, love her, love her.
How can you give your affections to that man? The looks and smiles you never give to me.
You want me to deceive you?
Not you deceive him.
Yes. All men but you.
You risked your life to come to me.
If he's found, you'll hang.
Our sin for life is death to come back. I have loved you since I first saw you in this house.
But it touches nothing. Here.
It's not natural.
It is natural in me.
Yet still, I love you.
You believed what you chose to believe.
Was that kind?
Who am I to be kind?
Estella, come with me now.
I stole her heart away and put ice in its place.
You're in every thought. You're part of my existence. You're part of me.
Please welcome the director of Great Expectations, Mr. Mike Newell, and his Pip and Estella, Jeremy Irvine and Holliday Grainger. So, Great Expectations. Mike, how long have you wanted to make this movie?
How what?
How long have you wanted to make this movie?
Actually, a long time.
Yeah.
Since I was, I guess, 19 or 20. Because I was a Dickens freak when I was young. And this was always my favorite because what it wants you to do is feel like him. Mm-hmm. And I did feel like him. And I've always wanted to make it, and I've always wanted to throw Magwitch in the water, and I've wanted to do the steamer, and I've wanted to do how they fall in love, and I've always wanted to do it.
Okay, so why did it take so many years for you to get around to it?
Because it's made so often.
Yeah.
And you have to find just the right time, and so we found just the right time when 11 months before the BBC had just done it. That's timing.
It's always good when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
But one of the things you've done is, and I was talking to Stephen Woolley, the producer, about this, was remind people how young Pip and Estella are
Yes,
in the
they're
novel.
always played too old.
Always played too old.
Always too old.
And you have a young Estella, a young Pip here,
Yes.
Holliday and Jeremy. Can you talk about your characters for people who may not know the novel or who haven't seen any of the miniseries been around for a few years? Holliday, start with you. Who's Estella?
So Estella is an orphan who's been brought up by a mad old jaded woman who's been jilted at the altar, Miss Havisham, and she's been brought up initially out of love, but has been taught the dangers of heartbreak, and so been brought up to wreak revenge on the male sex, and falls in love with the kind of falls in love. I think she falls in love with the young Pip, and it's about their her story is their kind of love story of not being able to show her love and feeling too proud to be able, and having too much self-restraint to be able to give herself over to actually admit her own emotions.
She's been taught by Miss Havisham that she must never be as vulnerable as Miss Havisham was. It's all about vulnerability, isn't it? And how she must fight that off.
And so, and I mean, in a very similar way, Pip is someone who's been so damaged through his upbringing. He's been horrifically, violently abused. He's been the victim of the most awful domestic violence, and this gives him this incredible sense of ambition. His way of getting out of this terrible life that he's grown up in is to become a gentleman. So this isn't some sort of childish, sort of whimsical idea. This is a burning obsession that completely takes over him and starts to kind of eat him from the inside. And one of the questions that Mike kind of asked me when we first started talking about it was, why is he so awful to all the people that? There's only a couple of people that are nice to him in the whole story, and that's who he's worst to. And you kind of look at, well, why is he like that? Because he's quite sound. But then you look at this obsession that it becomes so much a part of him that when Jaggers comes and says you have great expectations, that's it. He's got tunnel vision, and if it means abusing the one person that's been nice to him, then fine, that's what it takes. And if it means not marrying the girl that he should marry, then fine. And and then you look at him he just kind of, he sacrifices all his morality for this ambition and ends up sacrificing himself in a way. Yeah.
But here's a story. When Dickens was a little boy, he was very sweet and bright and outgoing, and he was really clever, and he knew he was really clever. And he went to school, and then his father, who was a nice man but hopeless, fell into debt and was taken into the debtor's prison, which is, it's not there any longer, but it was around Fleet Street. And then you had to live in the prison with your family until you could discharge your debt. And the only person who was old enough to earn a living, because his father couldn't, he was hopeless, his mother couldn't, equally hopeless, was this 11, 12-year-old boy. And he went off and he worked in a blacking factory, boot blacking, on the Strand. But because he was so good at it, because he was so good at packing the jars, they put him in the front window. He became a sort of tourist attraction, and people would go along and look at him and rap on the window, and he absolutely hated it because he knew that the job proved that his family was no good, that he was no good. He was horribly embarrassed, and every night he had to go back and he had to go into the prison and live with the family, and he tried desperately to fake it, that he would walk up somebody else's steps and knock on the door, so that people wouldn't recognize that he'd gone through the gate of the prison. And that marked him. And from then on, he was never good enough and he was never secure enough. He blamed his mother because his mother wanted him to stay there. He was so good at what he was doing. And that whole thing turned him sour on being a child, and he then, with nearly the last book, it's the last but one book, he invents this kid who has a horrible childhood, who gets beaten with a cane, who's not able to sort of trust himself to love people, and he's writing about his own childhood when he was publicly shamed in front of everybody walking up and down the Strand. It's a really interesting story. It's right there. It's real.
But also, I think there's kind of two ways of reading kind of Dickens like this. You can read it for the funny stories and the characters with silly names, and it's all a bit surreal and kind of, like people like Mr. Wopsle, and there's a cane called Tickler. Or you can read it for real, which is kind of what David Nicholls has done with his scripts. And when you do that and you look at it in a much darker light, suddenly everything starts to slot into place and it all starts making a lot more sense. I mean, there's been some wonderful adaptations, and this is the first big screen period adaptation since the David Lean version. But I don't know, I'd seen a lot of Pips which were quite sort of wide-eyed and innocent and
Yeah.
very kind of, and that is the trap with these characters, because you're playing the lead character that things happen to. You're the kind of the passive force in it. But we kind of looked at it. And what David wrote so well is, this is someone who has got this drive and this ambition, and he goes out to get what he wants. And he's savage in the way that he climbs the social ladder and is struggling. He puts people down to push himself up, and I found that quite exciting in this script.
And Estella has the most terrible background. Tell her about your background. I mean, it's, but it is awful.
Yeah.
And of course, you don't know. You discover it little bit by little bit.
Yeah, I think Estella is quite fascinating as a character because I always think it takes a couple of readings of the novel to get her, because you don't find out about her history until the end. It's like you're introduced to her through snippets all the way through, and once you do, she's got a convict as a father, and this how's her mom described in it? It's like a savage beast or something.
Yes.
And so
she's savage.
And she's been ripped away from her parents and just thrust into this dark, old, Gothic house with this woman who, I think Miss Havisham initially takes on Estella to sort of save her from her own heart, from her own experiences, from her own heartbreak, but ends up just ripping the heart out of her. And so from a young age, she's had her humanity stripped away from her and something else put in its place, and sort of just completely indoctrinated with this alter ego personality of she can't love and she can't let herself be loved because it'll only lead to pain.
It's almost like she's Miss Havisham's instrument of vengeance on men, all men.
Well, I don't think it ever sort of set out like that. Is that she's Miss Havisham originally adopted her to love her and to save her from her own fate, but you can't do that. You can't just put so many barriers into the place of someone's heart, because that stops them from being able to love completely and sort of.
They're both of them forced into characters that they would never normally have been by these terrible needy adults. Usually it's the children who are needy, and in this story it's the adults who are needy. Miss Havisham and Magwitch are terribly screwed up, really terribly screwed up.
I think my favourite
scene. And they pass that right on.
There's the scene where Helena, as Miss Havisham, apologises to Pip when she kind of realises what she'd done. And she has that line where she says, I took out her heart and put ice in its place. And I think that's these are just two very damaged, deliberately damaged children. Yeah.
Shall we meet them for the first time? We've given them a big build-up now. Let's meet them. This is a scene in which Pip and Estella see the scene outside the country house and the tree. Yeah. So let's have a look at that clip. Thank you.
Pip, will you never take warning?
How can you do it, Estella?
What?
Give your affections to that man.
All sorts of ugly creatures hover about a lighted candle. Can the candle help it?
No, but you can.
Perhaps. If I cared.
But you must care. Like, to encourage a man as despised, as unworthy and boorish as Bentley Drummle. And this is a man who has nothing to recommend him except money.
Don't let it affect you so.
I can't help it. And to give that man the looks and smiles you never give to me.
Do you want me to deceive you?
Do you deceive him?
Yes. Yes. Him and many, many other men. All men. All men but you.
Ooh. So, Holliday, is Estella even playing a game at that moment?
I
or
missed
is that actually what she's...
I've just heard something I never heard before. I missed a great moment. She shouldn't have known that she meant that. She shouldn't have known that she meant all men but you. She should just have tripped over that. It should have been
and then realised.
Something discovered.
Do you have time for a quick reshoot?
Let's do it again.
Let's do it. Shoot again.
You've got 3 days. I think you'll be fine.
I keep doing that every time I watch the film.
Yeah.
I keep thinking, different, should have done the other one.
And then I feel sick.
You can go around. You can go in all cinemas and just put scene missing up there.
Right.
I've always wanted, when you see something in the cinema, I've always wanted kind of subtitles at the bottom which say, this is the night that Jeremy was hungover, this is the night that Jeremy was feeling a bit sick, and just a little little just disclaimer. I think.
So which was it for that one?
That was the night
That was
Holly
late
was
at night.
really, really
That
ill.
was the night you were ill. That was the night
You know,
you were
one of
ill.
the dangers
Yeah.
in all of this is we make it sound all terribly kind of meaningful and heavy, and it's not, because what Dickens did was, it's like he wrote for adult comics almost. I mean, he wrote in 4 or 5 chapter chunks, and he published it in a magazine monthly. And so he had to. It's like watching Downton Abbey. You know, you get to the end of a segment on Downton Abbey and the music swells and the housemaid's pregnant and, oh, God, what are we going to do? And 2 minutes later, you start to sort it out. And Dickens wrote just like that. So you've got melodrama, you've got love story, and you've got some funny stuff, and you've got some exciting stuff. And it never stops. It's like great soap opera writing. It's wonderful stuff.
So how difficult is it to boil it all down into a 2-hour film?
Impossible.
Well, there you go. You've got 3 days to go back.
It takes 20 hours.
Well,
it takes 20
I mean, yeah,
it's a
it'd
long
be
one.
great to. I really envied the BBC because they had 3 hours and
Yeah.
they could do. And I would love to have done. There's a wonderful character in it called Mr. Wopsle who plays Hamlet, and has got this very, very fragile dress sense. And so he dresses up in all sorts of absolutely outrageous things, and then goes on and does all the great soliloquies from Hamlet. It's a wild comic thing, and I would love to have taken a stab at that, but we didn't have time. So
Was he ever in a draft? Did he
Nope.
ever make it at any point?
No. He never is. He's always
Yeah.
cut.
Always cut.
Yeah, from the movies, from the short versions, he's always cut.
And in the however many years you've been trying to make this movie, did it evolve for you at all? Was there ever a draft?
Oh, yeah.
Back in the 60s, 70s, 80s?
No. No, there was. I want to. Could people just stop talking about David Lean for a moment? Because I'd love to get a chance to do it. And I got a friend called. Who did Harry Potter 3?
Alfonso Cuarón.
What?
Alfonso Cuarón.
Alfonso. So Alfonso, who was really nice to me when I was doing Harry Potter 4, he was cutting Harry Potter 3, and he'd say, "Here, come and have a look at this," and he'd go and he'd show me bits, and I'd think, "Oh God, Alfonso, I wanted to do that. Now you've done it first." But we got to be, we got to like one another, and he asked me just before I made this what I was doing, and I said I was doing Great Expectations, and he went because of course he'd done a version with De Niro and Anne Bancroft and
Ethan Hawke and Gwyneth Paltrow,
Winnie
yeah.
and all of that, which was very sexy, and I always wanted to try and do that to the story as well.
And that was modern day, but this is
Yeah, it
obviously
was.
back in
It
a
was.
period piece.
Yeah.
Was that always the intention? You never wanted to update it or bring it into the modern era?
No, what I thought that the Dickens story was incredible, and it would be less if it wasn't Dickens. It would be if you didn't go into that market with the blood and the liver and the pig's heads. You'd lost a huge amount. You'd maybe made it a bit safer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to be any more. It wasn't going to be any more entertaining. And somehow or another, if you put it modern, you would have found that these two guys would have had all sorts of defense mechanisms because that's how, people are like that more now. And as soon as you've done that to the characters, you've lost the characters if they're not alive to their to the pain they're in. You've lost something.
But you did say, I mean, I don't know. I remember you saying that you wanted to make basically a modern movie in period clothes with the kind of.
Yes, I did want to do that.
I mean, there's a lot of like acting choices which we had to make where I think, especially like this sort of younger generation, like if you've seen a bad period movie where characters is just ever so withheld, and you get so caught up in the etiquette, and two characters stand across the room telling each other how much they love each other, but we wanted to kind of like, if a character should love someone so ferociously that they need to scream at someone, then in this we scream at each other, and we do you know, it is visceral and it is raw, and it's not, you know, what's lovely about a period movie like that is when, you know, you can have the etiquette, and then when you drop it, I don't know, there's some of my favourite sort of scenes to shoot.
It feels like there's still, you can still do that level of sort of Victorian self-restraint,
yeah,
but still let the, when you're in the depths of a kind of passionate emotion or whatever, like in that scene, you can still let that emotion come through without without preventing the feeling of you're holding something back.
Yeah. And I always think, you know, like, I mean, you've only got to read Shakespeare to see that people get just as angry, just as jealous, they still grieve just as, you know, just as we do now. So I find it difficult to believe that teenagers back then, when they're in love, wouldn't have the same, you know, urges and grievances that we do nowadays. So yeah.
When I went to university, I went to quite a snotty university, and I went to quite a snotty college. And I was the first person in my family ever to go to university, and I thought it was fantastic. And the buildings were old, and all these famous people had been to it, and so on and so forth. And on our first night, we went into dinner, and there was this great big long hall with long tables, and we all sat down, and we said a Latin grace, and it was incredible. And then as soon as everybody had said Amen, all the people from the posh public schools took up the food that was on the table and started to throw it at one another. They had a food fight. And I couldn't believe that was going on in front of me. And that's the origin. I mean, this was the sort of place where, what's that club that they all belong to? The Chancellor.
Bullingdon Club.
Well, the Bullingdon Club, yeah. That's the roots of the Bullingdon Club, and so we put the Bullingdon Club on the screen because actually it was as alive then as it is now.
Yeah. That game where we threw the pineapple. That one.
Right.
We don't have that clip, sadly, but we do have another clip, which is the return of Megwitch into the film, played by Ralph Fiennes. Mike, I don't know if you want to talk about Megwitch and how he fits into the plot.
Yeah, poor man. He's you know, the way things are these days, fair is a word. It's a really important word these days. Is it fair? Do we feel it's fair? Does the nation feel that such and such is fair? Well, for Magwitch, everything is unfair. He's a really bright guy, but he's from way down the bottom of society. Things start to go wrong for him when he's a kid, and they never, ever go right, and he's always oppressed by classy people, by people who've got class, who know how to behave, who went to decent schools and all of that kind of stuff, and he does their shit work, and it's not fair. And that's what Rafe did, and he was very anxious to play it Cockney, because Cockney is a kind of violent language. Two great Cockney syllables, right? All right. And that's aggression. All right. And Rafe wanted that to be in his character. That's why he wanted to be Cockney, and he wanted to feel that the whole world wasn't fair, and that if he could make a gentleman who would go out and beat the world up for him, he'd get some kind of redress. There'd be some sort of justice for him. And he's sent away to Australia. He's a convict in chains and all that kind of stuff. And then he comes back, and he's sort of transformed himself. And here he is.
Here he is, indeed. Thank you.
Who are you?
Why? Shh. Why?
How did you get in here?
You acted noble, my boy. Noble. And I've never forgotten.
Look, if you're grateful for me for what I did as a boy, it's not necessary. Really, you must understand.
What must I understand?
That I cannot renew our acquaintance. Look, my life has changed since then. I'm glad that you're well and you've repented, but really, you must go. Please?
How about a drink first, before I go?
He's such a little snot, Pip. I'm glad you've repented.
Just had a proper little. I watched the English Patient last night. I just had a proper little. That's very fine. That's really cool.
Did you not have that moment on set?
You try and repress it. But Race, I in my incredibly short amount of experience in this, like, he is the most committed actor I've ever seen. I mean, when the camera's kind of on, when he's on set, it's Magwitch, and when you have to act terrified of him, it's surprisingly easy.
Okay. So, Mike, this Ralph Fiennes, Helena Bonham Carter, Robbie Coltrane. It's a bit of a Harry Potter reunion in a
Sally Hawkins.
In a way.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
But it's a fantastic cast. I mean, can you talk about, were these people all your first choice? Did you have Rafe in mind for Magwitch?
I started with Rafe. I found Jeremy at the end of a very long piece of string. I found Holliday as not. Did you come to Susie's?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Came and sat with the dog on my knee.
Yes, that's right. That's right. We found them all. I started with Rafe because I knew Rafe had this sort of fund of violence in him. He played. No, never mind. He can be violent.
Just leave it at that. And Holliday and Jeremy, how did you get involved in this in the first place? So had you just done Warhorse at the time?
Yeah, I'd just done Warhorse, and I was, I don't know, I mean, truth be told, I was about to go and do something that was, I was kind of being, I guess, kind of moved into the way of doing what I guess you'd call kind of commercial kind of movie, and then I read the script for this, and I just kind of went, oh, that's kind of what I want to be doing next, and so, I finished. That was Borgias, my first movie, and I finished that, and then waited 6 months to do another little movie called Now Is Good, and this movie. And when I signed up, I don't think anyone else had been attached, so I signed up purely because Mike was directing, and because the script was so good. And then kind of over the months that followed, I always think it's kind of like when you put together like your dream football team of actors, but it's kind of like when you do that with footballers, but with actors, and then Helena got involved, and Holliday and Rafe and people like that, and it just kind of turned into this sort of mad, surreal dream, really.
Where would Ralph Fiennes play on a football team?
It's good. Him and Vinnie Jones. Can you imagine?
The midfield enforcer, the hard man in the middle.
No, I wouldn't play against him.
And Holliday, you've done previously Jane Eyre, Anna Karenina. I mean, you're ticking off literary classics one by one.
Yeah, I'm gonna work my way through them.
How did this one come about for you?
I mean, as they all do, is through an audition. But I love Great Expectations, and I'd studied it a few times, and I was writing an essay actually on Dombey and Son when I got the audition for this. So I had my novel out already because I was flicking through all my old Dickens novels.
Holden was doing her English degree at the time we were shooting.
I mean, had you picked out a part in Dombey?
No, because she's a bit too young.
You wouldn't. No, and she's a bit too sort of twee and
yeah. I mean, his wife. Maybe I'm getting old enough for his wife now.
Right.
She's like
I was trying to do Dombey, but Dombey's so big you can't.
Yeah, I mean,
that
huge.
thick.
Yeah, it took me. Dombey and Son I used to listen to on my way to set onto the Borgias, but I used to listen to it on audiobook on double speed. Because it's so long.
More input.
Absolutely. Yeah. Harvey Weinstein watches Rush's double speed.
Really?
Yeah, really good.
So is this coursework for you?
Well,
can you just submit the movie?
Well, it was kind of like, it was just... I mean, it would have been an incredibly hard audition to go for if you hadn't have read the novel, to be like, oh yeah, tomorrow you're going for Great Expectations. And so it was fine because I'd already got the book out, so it's just like, great, flick through, Estella. It was like refresh your memory. And I mean, she had such a sort of strong impact on me as a character when I was younger because I didn't get her the first time I read it. And then I think I must have read it a couple of times after and started to love her for all her complexities. And so then to be like, oh great, yes, I have this in front of me and I get to go for it. And yeah, it felt like a lot of fun. I sat and chatted with Mike for about an hour actually about it. Just, yeah, it was.
I remember. They won't mind me saying this, but Jeremy is. When I first started work, I was really lucky that I worked with a generation of Hollywood actors who had been very famous and had made lots of great big movies in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, like Gregory Peck and Charlton Heston. And these guys, they had this extraordinary quality of they filled up the screen. When they were on, there were no edges anywhere. You didn't look anywhere else. And it was they didn't fool around. They didn't. They knew what they wanted to say. They knew who they wanted to be, and they were just it. And he's like that. Jeremy's like that. But Holly's not like that. Holly does 3 things at once all the time.
It's because I can't decide which one to do.
No, that's not true. That's just not true. No, there's always this kind of flickering thing going on in you. It's very interesting cutting the two of them together, because what you have is Jeremy who sort of stands up to it. He's like some kind of knight with a great big sword, and he's going to cut the legs off this scene if he dies in the attempt, and that's wonderful. That's heroic. And then Holly is there on the other side of the screen, flickering away like mad. And to try and put those two together is sometimes very difficult, actually, because she's right in the middle of a really good flicker. When he's in with the sweep of the sword, he's going to cut the legs off somebody.
Okay.
It's a very interesting difference in style.
Well,
it really is.
Should we see that dynamic in action one last time before we take some questions from you guys? This is another emotionally fraught scene between Pip and Estella. Let's take a look at the clip. Thanks.
Give me your hand. Be happy, Pip. This will pass in time. I'll be out of your thoughts in a week.
Out of my thoughts. You're in every thought. You're part of my existence. You're part of me. You're in every thought. In every line I've ever read since I first came here. You're in the river. The sails of ships. The sea. The clouds. The stones of London. Until the last hours of my life, you will remain in me. Part of the little good, part of the evil. And I will always think of the good. Goodbye, God bless you.
I want to say 2 things. One is that Rafe absolutely loved acting with Jeremy. He loved it. And I know why it is. It's because Jeremy was always there. You can't do a scene like that where you've got to say all that stuff about the sails of ships and the river and that kind of stuff. You can't do that if you're scared of it. And he was never scared of it. Holliday has this extraordinary thing that goes to her eyes, and when she feels, she will quite spontaneously cry. It's not that there's not a tap. It's not a cynical thing at all. It's deeply connected to her emotions. But you saw what happened there, That's not us messing about with eye drops and stuff like that. That's her feeling it. I was very fortunate in the two of them. I loved that scene, and I used to love the days when I had the two of them together.
Holliday, was that a one-take deal for you, or is that?
I really, really didn't want Estella to cry. Like, I find it quite difficult to get emotional without crying as a person. So then if I get emotional in character, they just cry all the time.
And Jeremy, what about you? You're like the new Gregory Peck, so I imagine you're quite stoic.
Right. Well, if Mike didn't think I wasn't terrified, then I was fucking shaking. No, I mean, it was. I don't know. I mean, like you sometimes when you're acting, you're going in your head before the scene. Okay, that's Estella. Okay, that's Estella. I'm imagining that's Estella. Okay, we're going in. Okay, or you make her someone that you know or something. But with every single actor in this, I mean, like Rafe, Holliday, when I looked at Rafe, I didn't have to go, okay, there's Rafe Fiennes and he's Magwitch. No, it's Magwitch, and with Holliday, when Holliday turned on this cold Stella thing, and you don't have to do that, so it just makes your job so easy. Like all you have to do is just kind of react to it, and it's. Yeah, it just makes it easier when.
Not everybody does. Not everybody can.
Okay, I think we've got time for some questions for you guys. If you have anything at all you want to ask.
Hi, my question is for Jeremy. I've sort of seen a pattern with there's a lot of young adult novels that are being adapted into big films, and they all seem to be starring like up-and-coming young British actors. So you have Andrew Garfield in Spider-Man, you have Rob with Twilight, and Sam Claflin is doing The Hunger Games, and Jimmy Kimmel Bauer is doing Mortal Instrument. So my question is to you, have you seen that in your career? Like, have you seen these type of scripts coming your way as like people sort of been looking to you that way?
Do you know what? I mean, I'm hugely flattered to be included in that group. I know, like Sam and Jamie and things, and they're great actors. Yes, but I don't know. I mean, the scripts that really excite me are the ones that I've done, like this, and I mean, Now Is Good is a film that I'm really proud of, those are all great films, but some of the things like that have come my way, they might be, the big commercial film, but if you don't feel as passionate about it as you do that little $3.5 million movie that I just came back from Texas doing something that. Where you're going to live in a little trailer for for 6 weeks, and everyone's kind of just doing it for free, and you're just doing. If that's the script you feel passionate about, then it's never really a hard choice, really. Although saying that, especially when I just finished Warhorse, there was a lot of pressure to go and do slightly different films, I guess. But I don't know. I'm quite surprised myself actually for back then doing it. I mean, it's all very easy to say that now, but I don't know. I do the films that move me and that I like, Yeah.
And Holliday, do you feel there's pressure on you to do a certain type of movie or to go in a certain direction?
Nope.
Good, excellent. That's what we're going. Anyone else got another question? Put your hands up, and there we go. There's a gentleman there, and that's the way to do it. I'll accept gifts as well, by the way, if you have anything.
Hello, I would like to ask all of you. Starting with the lady of the team, out of all the previous film versions of Great Expectations, which is your most favorite one? Thank you.
Which is what my favorite version?
Yeah.
Oh, they're all really different. I mean, I love the Alfonso Cuarón one as a modern film, but I mean, that is interesting just because you go, oh, you've done that with it. Oh, that's how you've adapted it. David Lean was was like a classic favourite as a kid. And I did love the BBC one actually at Christmas as well, which didn't make me worried about having just done this because feels like it embodied a different vibe of Dickens than this was. That theirs was quite slow and ethereal and tried to embrace the realism. And I think there's quite a lot of colour in our one.
Yes.
Feels like it's embraced that kind of theatricality and a bit more of the bigger characters that we all associate with Dickens, but as well at the same time as being quite dark and psychologically real, I guess.
But it's such a huge story. It takes 20 hours to read out loud. And so,
10 if you're on double speed on an audio tape.
10 if you're Holliday Grainger. But no, it's I don't know. That means that if you're doing 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour adaptations, they're never going to be the same. And I've seen some really great TV ones. I thought Douglas Booth did a wicked job, and but I still think my favourite's probably David Lean version. But I don't know. Yeah.
I'm supposed to say this one.
But it's very much. Oh no. Well, yeah. But that's a version that's very much. That was 1946. It's very much of the time. It's very much in that style of acting back then. Things are much more reserved, much more. Much more of the period, and and it's about time that we had another big screen adaptation, so that we can kind of bring some of that violence back in, and that sexiness and that rawness. I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Mike, do you have a favourite?
No, not been made yet. There's a very good one with Johan Griffith playing Pip. It's made by a really, really good director, and it's driving me nuts that I can't remember his name. British guy.
Quickly to the IMDb.
What?
Someone can tell me in a second. I can see phones going out right now.
Oh, yeah, come on.
Even
guys,
now, people are Googling it.
Look where you are. Get the phones going. What's that? Yes!
Julian Jarrett from the producer. There we go.
Yes, that's right. That's right. He's terrific. That's the producer. Everybody, that's the producer. You should thank her. She got it done. She never let me. She would never tell me what the budget was. She only told me what the budget was on the night that we had the premiere. Then she told me what the budget was. But beyond that, before that, she didn't really know. Was it a lot? Was it a lot too little, or was it only just a bit too little? And we went from all sorts of plans for the end to a field in Berkshire.
Well, we're meant to be shooting in
anyway,
Morocco.
There she is, and she's a heroine.
Yeah. I had a sign on my trailer door that was
yes,
selling my body for
that's right. He was
for money for the Morocco Film Fund. That was,
we wanted to shoot the last scene in Morocco, and so he was going to sell his body. Any takers?
£10 10 minutes. I thought it was fair. It sounded reasonable.
Robbie
Coltrane was up for it. So
that's a really long handshake. Any other questions for our intrepid trio? Oh, you're all shy. Disgraceful. In that case, I'll wrap up with one last question. What's next for you guys?
Holiday.
Should our expectations be great? I had to say it.
You go.
Yeah, I think so. We're never allowed to say though, are we?
I know. No, you have to sign these things, yeah.
You had a ban on set, like a Great Expectations swear jar if you said something like that. You had to put your entire fee for the day in.
No, I mean, no one ever has money until nothing's ever a definite, so I don't think we're ever allowed to say it. I'm doing the Borgias at the moment still, so finish season 3 of that.
Okay.
And hopefully doing a little bit of theatre in January.
Excellent. And Jeremy?
I've got a movie called The Railway Man, which was with Colin Firth and Nicole Kidman. That's really cool, and that's that we finished filming that this summer, and then another movie called Nice Old Mexico, which is this little movie we did in Texas with it's kind of like me and Robert Duvall, which I thought was pretty cool to get to do that. So
Robert Duvall,
I had a lot of starstruck moments on that set. So that was cool.
Well, constantly, every time you met him, you were starstruck.
It's
like Groundhog Day.
It's a terrible thing to do. No, he's a great guy. He's really nice. Yeah.
And Mike, what's next for you?
I'm going to make a film with Michael Douglas and with a guy called Christoph Waltz, who's the guy who played the Nazi colonel in Inglourious Bastards.
Amazing.
Of a meeting between President Reagan and Gorbachev, which very, very, very nearly ended the Cold War, but not quite, and came down to one word. And if Reagan had been prepared to say that he would take out of the final communique the word laboratory, the Cold War would have ended 4 years before it actually did. But he was not prepared to say that, and it went on. And it's the most wonderful story about two men sparring with one another and getting to know, and actually getting to like one another, almost to love one another. It's a really good story.
That's a cracking cast.
Yeah, it's a cracking cast.
Yeah, not bad at all. You must be looking forward to playing with those guys. Yeah.
Yes, I hope I do play with them. I hope I do.
Fantastic. On that note, Great Expectations comes out on Friday. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your questions, and thanks most of all to Jeremy Irvine, Holliday Grainger, and Mike Newell. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.